which was all Rotax. So that we did that from '04 to '09 or 10.
Okay.
And then the challenge, I started the challenge in '08, and that kind of took a lot of my energy, and then, things, the ebb and flow of the sport, right? So the summer program kind of went away, and I focused on the winter, etc. I think the thing that we learned more than anything, unfortunately, is the consistency, the things that I think ultimately led to Rotax's demise. And while we had holy cow, I was at the very first Rotax meeting in the United States back in, I think, 2000. The very first Rotax engine I ever saw was at a race that we used to put on these Irwindale events on Thursday night. And Joe Ramos had Darren Elliott running just an FR125, the single speed Rotax, in the shifter class, just to show off the product. And nobody knew even what it was back then. I think that was probably summer of '99. Summer of 2000.
Okay.
So, I'd been around a long, long time, since the very first day that engine hit the shore. And, unfortunately, it survived for a long time, even with a lot of the changes, and, they're always called updates, but in the end, they were simply changes. And, that's ultimately what led it to its demise, is that, the last round of changes just were not accepted by the consumer. And that's what ultimately made the whole program kind of implode, at least here in the States. So hopefully we learned from that. The ROC program, they've guaranteed, several years of consistency. The mini ROC has been around for several years. It was the stalwart cadet engine for another program for many years. So, it's not going anywhere. That's the basis of cadet racing in Italy, is, the CIK 60cc class, which is a mini ROC. Mini ROC conforms to that class structure. The GP, the junior and senior and masters GP, that's guaranteed to be the same for several years. And then, the ROC shifter, holy cow, it's been around for a few years, but there are no plans to make any changes or updates to that, because that is by far the fastest selling shifter engine in the country right now. We can't keep them on the shelf. It's crazy.
You're absolutely right about that. Yeah. And I think for the West Coast racers, they're benefiting from Tony Kart and Vortex rolling out the ROC program in Florida, and really being very proactive when an issue arose. They jumped on it. They were, I don't know the right word.
Well, Mr. Robazzi, who owns OTK and Vortex, is an extremely passionate man, and very passionate about his products. And if there is an issue, he is the first one to jump on it. Here's the owner of OTK and Vortex, and we went there, last fall. We were there for the international final. I took a couple guys. We went on a factory tour, and we went down into the dyno room where Silo Puyaka was breaking in engines for a WSK race, and Mr. Robazzi was the guy in the dyno room with him. So here's the owner of the biggest manufacturing company in our sport. And he's running the dyno, because that's how passionate he is. So yeah, the response time, if there are any issues, is certainly fast and efficient. And he's well known for building, his factories for building the finest products around, on both sides, whether it be chassis or engines. So, having him at the head of the ship certainly benefits the program.
Yeah, that's just a neat insight too. Like you said, the largest or one of the largest manufacturers out there, and sitting there in the dyno room, those places are not pleasant.
Right.
Making sure the program's getting done.
You may be familiar with the dyno room now and then, where you go there out in Wilton.
I'm usually getting kicked out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, good times. Wow. It's, it's been exciting to see just the growth, especially on the shifter side. I don't know. Do you kind of recall your numbers from last year on the shifters to this year, and the growth?
Oh yeah, I mean we were, my goal last year. I mean the first year we had, a dozen combined, right? So this is year 3, and we started with the very first race under the Rock banner in 2018. We started with 85 total entries, but 62 of them were Rock because we had a LO206 class.
That's right.
To kind of help them. We ran LO206 and we averaged about 20 of those. So that first year we averaged between 85 and 90 at all the races. So we started out with only 62 Rocks. Like I said, only like 10 or 12 were shifters, and by the end I think we had close to 80 Rocks, but it's still in that 12 to 15 combined between the two classes, senior and masters. Last year, we flirted with the 30 number. Man, if we could just get to 30 combined. Oh, if we could just get to 30 combined, that was my goal, right? And I think we touched it one time, but most of the time we were 25-ish combined.
Okay.
And then this year is absolutely shattered. I mean, we had 50 shifters at Cal Speed this last weekend. So, I mean, my goal this year, I'm a realist when it comes to growth, when it comes to slow growth, setting reachable goals. Okay, we basically hit 30 last year. If we could just hit 40 this year, if we hit X, let's try to get to Y. Let's try to get 10%. Keep chipping away. And man, to go from 30 to 50 is fairly ridiculous, really. But it shows how well received that product is, and the quality, and how excited the karting consumer is about that product. That we get 50, and I bet at Sonoma, if everybody shows up that came to Cal Speed, we could hit 60.
Yeah.
When was the last time we saw 60 shifter carts on the West Coast? Well, I mean it's been a long time.
It's been a while. And the racing as well is very, very tight. There's not dominance with the engine packages. It's every weekend. You got your favorites out there that you can say, okay, they're probably going to be on the podium, but it's not a 10, 20, 30 second walk away victory. The racing and the Vortex stuff has been very close.
Yeah, no, that's you go back to the differences, and I hate to harp on it, and you and I talked about not really talking about Rotex much on this and focusing on the future, but I'll share with you a little insight I kind of figured out maybe 8, 10 months ago. The differences between, say, Rotex and the reason why they maybe have suffered is because they are a power sports company, and a company like Vortex is a motor sports company. So where all of Rotex's R&D dollars were spent and quality control dollars were spent on making sure the product was, say, long-lasting and ease of use, and that's where their dollars and energy was spent. Vortex, being a motorsport company, they're trying to make sure their R&D dollars are spent to make sure the stuff is, even is a terrible word because there's no such thing as even in motorsports, because there's always somebody who works harder, spends more money, finds something, whatever it is, tunes better, right? Even is a terrible word, but competitive and balanced is probably the better word. And when I saw the $1 million machine that they had that takes, one out of every 20 cylinders, puts it on the jig and takes a laser pointer and basically tests that cylinder in 20 or 30 different spots to make sure all the ports are in the same spot. Everything is proper, right? The ports are in the same spot. The ports measure properly. The exhaust is right. The transfers are right. So all their dollars are spent to make sure that stuff is close. So that pays off when that product hits the racetrack, and you can see 20 guys that qualify within a second.
Yeah, it really comes down to you could almost look at it and go, okay, the guys that are on the podium, they also spend a lot of time at the track. They're driving a lot, and they're putting in the effort.
There's no substitute. There's no substitute for track time. I mean, I've joked for years and years, and it's really no joke. I said, rules makers can write a 1,000-page rule book, and they can cover rules for every scenario except how much money someone spends and how hard they work. Right? You can't make rules for that. So
Yeah.
if you can only do one, you better do the one you can. And if you can do both, God bless you. And those are the guys that are hard to beat. The guys that can spend the extra money and the guys that can work extra hard. Those are the guys that are really hard to beat. So for sure, you see the guys that are in the go-kart, once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. There is no coincidence why those guys are run up front all the time.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that just transfers over just to life. Both you and I have been able to see some very successful people in our sport, and you see different programs, and then you look at how they run their business or they run their life, and there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah, weird how that works, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and let's see. That is. I don't keep flow very well, as you can probably see. I have a little bit of ADD.
That's all right. That's not a big deal.
I clicked over on my screen and I see road tax. It's like, okay, don't harp on road tax. We're not going down that road.
That's okay. I think we've covered it enough. But for sure, the bottom line, like you said, I've learned from those experiences. We moved on, and obviously the program is in a better place than it ever was. I mean, we hit. In the 13-year history of the Challenge of the Americas, we hit our highest entry total ever this past weekend in the rock program. So it's obviously going the right way.
Yeah, and that says even more, because I think you could probably argue that if you took, the karting numbers in general from back in the Rotax version of Challenge of the Americas or Gators, karting as a whole was probably stronger. And to say that you're having better numbers now and breaking your own records, that's terrific.
Oh yeah, no, it's huge. It's huge. It's certainly a great accomplishment. I mean, I'm proud of what my staff has accomplished. What we do together, and I'm happy to have the support of so many great teams and drivers that recognize the competitiveness and value in our program. That they want to come out and be a part of it. I mean, it's due to everybody. I mean, this industry is a funny industry, right? I mean, how many tracks do we go to where the competitor is mad at the shop's mad at the promoter's mad at the importer, blah blah, the mechanic's mad at the driver, but in the end, we all need each other to work hard to make it better. And if we just put our heads down and like you said, work harder. It'll all reach a height that we never thought. And certainly, I hit a big number this past weekend, and I don't think that's going to stop. I think there are 2 or 3 big areas I can see that I really need to work on to grow for the end of this year, into next year, and beyond. And I can certainly see if we do our job there, we can hit 170, 180, 190, maybe even cross the 200 mark at some point, which I've never seen in my series. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what the next 2 to 3 years are really going to bring.
Yeah. Well, speaking of working hard, let's get you have a lot of. You're just not full throttle karting. You're just not Challenge of the Americas, which your website is challengekarting.com. You're also now you're the West Coast distributor for the Vortex Rock Engine, correct?
Yes, we started when we first signed the Rock deal 3 years ago. We started with the Bridgestone tire, the Rock Bridgestone tires. Mm-hmm. I became the distributor for the tire because, we all know that the tires are the biggest consumable that we have in our sport, and they're big, they're bulky, they cost a lot of money, and dealers, when they need them, and we couldn't. It's difficult to rely on one importer or one distributor in this big gigantic country of ours. So the first thing we did when we signed the deal was take on the Bridgestone tire line, and we've been the distributor for that for the West Coast since day one. And then we got, now it's going into